This is our Shanesmithlaw's client victories for the week. And this is high-speed hit causes loss of consciousness and brain damage to our client. Hi, I'm Shane Smith. Welcome to this week's client victory, where we discuss a case that one of the attorneys at Shanesmithlaw, Thomas Ozbolt, did, where he recently got a client victory for one of his clients, SF. Thomas, tell me a little bit about this particular case.
Yeah, so SF was a 36-year-old stay-at-home mother. The course of this incident, she was dropping off her significant other at work around 6 a.m. on New Bern Avenue in Raleigh, pretty busy stretch there. She was stopped at a red light changing the radio station. When out of the corner of her left eye, she saw a car just come flying, speeding into her range of vision there. She saw the headlights just flash right by the left side of her head and heard a screeching sound, and then everything went black. When she came to, firefighters had to pry her door open to get her out of the vehicle. She had a shooting pain on the left side of her body. She went to the hospital. They put her in a neck brace, did CT scans of her entire body. They found that nothing was broken, but of course, it doesn't tell you a whole lot about everything else that's going on inside of her body. Yeah. But she was laid up in bed for days afterwards. Turns out she had pretty significant neck and back injuries. She had a herniated disc in her lumbar spine, muscle spasms, but most significantly, she learned through some various scans that she had a traumatic brain injury. So that's kind of how everything kind of ran together there in terms of how her treatment course went. She started at the ER, she went to the chiropractor, she went to a medical doctor where she received different injections for the pain in her lower back. But over the course of the 11 months that she was in treatment here, she really had a lot of symptoms that were pretty concerning. And those were ringing in her ears. She had blurry vision, splitting headaches, migraines. None of this had happened to her before the accident. So what ended up happening was that she was seen by some doctors at the National Brain Injury Institute, and they performed Diffusion Tensor imaging, which is a little bit more detailed MRI scan. It's essentially a new technology. And when I say new, probably in the last 8 or 9 years. And what it does is it uses a specially calibrated MRI machine to pulse the brain from 30 different angles, and then it tracks how the fluid dynamics, the water of the brain travels through the different axons, tracks of the brain, and can tell for the first time and provide evidence for the first time in terms of objective evidence that anybody could see anywhere that there has been permanent injury to a particular area of the brain. So we were able to determine here, yeah.
I was going to say, how did we get her to that facility? How did that process happen? Did your team recognize some symptoms that concerned you guys? Did the doctors recognize some symptoms of brain injury? What happened to make everybody think, hey, maybe she's got this, we need to go get this test to confirm it?
Right. She was diagnosed with a closed head injury at the hospital, which is essentially, a head injury, a concussion of some sort. So that was kind of the first, warning sign that, hey, something really, really wrong could have happened here. But, our team and our firm, what we do is we'll follow up every 30 days and at the beginning of a case with a brain injury checklist and ask the client to fill out the various symptoms that she's experiencing that may be related to a brain injury. We will check those, at different intervals as the case proceeds. And what the literature tells us is that if there is symptoms of a head injury that continue 90 days after, the traumatic event, then it's likely that there's been a traumatic brain injury and or a permanent brain injury here. So we were identifying those things, keeping track of them as it happened. And, when the time came, we got that information over to the professionals so that they could, make a determination about what was causing those symptoms.
Okay. All right. And how has she done so far? How's SF at? Is she mostly recovered? Is she back to life normal? Is she still struggling? What's sort of the status of that head injury?
I'd say she's still struggling. It's something that, as this case began to wrap up in terms of the claim, she was still struggling and still suffering from what was happening here. But the good thing was that she was able to identify where all this was coming from. And by being able to identify the problem, she can take the steps that are necessary to rehabilitate that and prevent that injury from getting worse as she continues, to age as time goes on.
Okay. And were you able to get this case resolved without filing a lawsuit, or did you have to file a lawsuit against the insurance company?
Yeah, we were able to get it resolved without filing a lawsuit. The liability, we had to fight a little bit in terms of educating them on diffusion tensor imaging and brain injuries, because I think it's something that a lot of the world is catching up to in terms of understanding and being able to wrap their head around it. And so that took a little bit longer than you would have thought to get the liability portion resolved. But once we got it from liability over to our client's underinsured motorist coverage, it happened pretty quickly to resolve the underinsured motorist coverage portion.
And Thomas, I know after this case, one of the things you said you wanted to get better at was to learn how to explain it to the adjusters, the medical portion of this, when the adjusters don't know anything about it or don't know about a head injury or the kind of treatment that's going on. What steps are you doing to be able to do better at that?
We went out and found a treatise by the ABA Medical Legal Guides. It's called Head Trauma and Brain Injury for Lawyers, and has a lot of literature and studies, different research that lays out all the different symptoms, how to treat a brain injury, and how that appears in your clients, and just the science behind it as well, because you need to be able to know that to really understand everything that's going on with this.
What did SF think about the resolution of the case?
She was really happy. She had pretty significant bills. She treated for a long time. She went through various treatment regimens to try to get her back together. And, a lot of her back pain had resolved by the end of it. So we were thankful that she was able to, at least the point that the case closed, she wasn't suffering as much from her back injuries. We know that, herniated discs can be permanent injuries that extend, on forever. But she was happy that her back pain had largely resolved for the time being. She was thrilled that she was able to identify what brain injury she had suffered, and she was incredibly happy to be able to get all that treatment and then walk away with tens of thousands of dollars. And
I know in a lot of clients I've talked to, sometimes actually just getting the diagnosis and knowing the symptoms of a brain injury are real, with some kind of injury, makes them feel a whole lot better. It makes them feel like they're not crazy, or at least they can blame something else for it or pinpoint what caused the change.
Absolutely. And that, I think, was really important to her, is finding out for sure, that this was really happening, that it was related to the accident, and that, she could know that it was there and how to address it in the future. And I think that was kind of the biggest step for her.
One more thing, Thomas, what did you learn from this case that you can use for your other clients?
Yeah, the biggest thing to me was learning a lot about the diffusion tensor imaging and, just the level of insurance professionals' familiarity with it, and just learning that there just wasn't a whole lot of familiarity with it. It's relatively new technology, and so learning that, it let me know that I needed to get better at being able to explain it and be prepared to advocate for our clients who are suffering from those brain injuries. So that it did a tremendous amount in that direction for me.
All right, and I think you said earlier, basically you exhausted the liability policy, then also went after the UM policy and exhausted that as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
All right, so it sounds like you did as good as you could do, get all the money.
We got all the money that was there. It was $100,000, and we got it. We got all of it.
All right. Great result for SF, and I'm glad you could help her actually get the test that proved, what everybody was worried about, and so she feels better about it. For our listeners, thanks for listening. Remember, if you're in pain, call Shane, 980-999-9999, or order our free book, The Victim Survival Guide to Car Accidents. And like I say, if you're suffering in an accident, you're having head injuries or concussions, make sure you get the right tests. If it's something we can help with, we'll be glad to talk to you about it and make sure we can clear it up. Thomas and his team did a great job identifying the injury here, making sure this client got the resolution she could and got the injury diagnosed, which a lot of times is a huge, huge win in and of itself. So a good job there. And we'll be going over another case next week.
980-999-9999. 980-999-9999. Shanesmithlaw. In pain, call Shane.